Welcome to We Question and Learn. This is Tom Pies. We're celebrating our 15th year, and over the year we've had some very, very special guests. Today we have the County Executive, Kathy Dahlkemper. Welcome
Thanks,
to WQLN.
Tom,
You've been here many times.
And happy anniversary, 15 years.
Yeah, 15 years in
it's
July,
really quite a run for you, and that's wonderful.
Well, it's fun because we're honored to have folks like you, and your job is, to me, a very difficult job because you have a bigger picture. The city is great. Everything the city's doing is fine. You can see huge visible changes in the city. But the city is part of the county.
Yes, it is.
And the county is your responsibility. Now, you had 2 years in Congress. That was 2010 to
2009 and 11.
2009
and 2009 and 2010. Yeah, they were.
And then you had a little hiatus in between. And this is your second term. You're in your second term
in
from
my
January.
6th year now as county executive.
Where does the time go?
I know, it flies.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to think that it was actually 12 years ago when I was first running for office for the first time in my life. Well, since I ran for student council. But
well, you know that counts.
Yeah, right. So these past 12 years have just been an amazing journey.
So when you ran for county executive, what possessed you, if I could put it that way, or what was your ambition? What were your goals when going back 6 years now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I've always loved this community. And what I found when I was in Congress was, and you hate to say you have a favorite child, and I had 7 counties to take care of, but Erie County was the favorite child.
Yeah.
And what I saw, there's just so much potential in this community. It was unrealized, and I think all of us were feeling that way. And I thought, is there a way for me to help affect the positive change that needs to happen here? And I actually looked at both the mayor of the city of Erie position, I looked at the county executive position, and I decided that the county work really was more the things that I cared deeply about. So I decided to run for the county executive position, and came in really wanting to help make these changes to help move this community to the place it needs to be.
What I enjoy about talking with you and then looking at the paperwork about you, you create a business plan, and you have actually bullet points that are critical to you.
They really are,
and
yes.
they're important. Now, I have them listed, but I'm going to ask you one at a time, and if you care to address these so that the audience understands. Now, that was January. This is already a few months later, but I'm sure you've been working on this since you were in office. These are your core ideas?
Yes, most of these have to do with the core ideas that I came in with.
That you came in with. You actually have 10. We'll try to get as many as we can, but one of the things, the Public Health Focused Blue Zones Project, can you explain how that works? Actually, tell folks what it is for folks who are not aware.
Sure. So this is, to me, one of the most exciting things that my administration has led in this community, and I think it can be one of the most impactful as we see it kind of unfold over the next few years. So blue zones are the places in the world where people live the longest and the healthiest. Many people living to be 100 years old in these communities and being very healthy. They're not living in nursing homes. They're out and active and healthy. And they found these places in the world. There's 5 of them, and they looked at what was similar in each of these areas, and they came up with basically 9 points. And one is to move naturally. These people are not going to the gym. They're not, power lifters, but they're moving naturally. They're out, they're walking, they're biking, they're gardening. Their daily lives have them out and moving. Another is that they have a plant slant diet. They're not vegetarians per se. Maybe some are, but their diet is much more plant-based than it is animal-based. A key thing is that they all have a purpose. And, we know that in Erie County, 1 out of 10 people actually wake up in the morning with no purpose. They don't really know why they're getting out of bed. So you need to have a purpose in your life throughout your entire life. And I think particularly maybe as people age, they don't really know what that purpose is once they've retired. And so having that purpose is important. They have an 80% rule where they only eat till they're about 80% full, and then they walk away from the table, which is wise for all of us. What's key also is they have a way to downshift, whether it be through meditation or some other practice that kind of helps them to just downshift and reduce the stress in their life. And we know that that is so important. Family is first to them. They're very connected to family, and I think we all know the benefits of that. And then they also have a group of people that they belong to, friendships, different social groups that support them in their lives, and we all know how important that is. And yet we also know that that is becoming less and less common for all people. And then they also, one of the other ones that I love is a little wine at 5.
Yeah.
All these groups
We're
drank
in the best community
a
for
little
that.
bit of wine. I mean, they weren't drinking excessive amounts, but
You
they
just
were
made
drinking
a whole bunch of vintners
a lot.
very
So,
happy.
and then the last thing is most of them had some kind of a faith connection.
Yeah.
They belong, and it's changed. It could be because these places were everywhere from Japan to Loma Linda, California, to one of the Greek islands. But so they weren't all the same faith, but they all were connected to some sort of faith expression. So anyway, Blue Zones, this group, was asked by AARP about 12 or 13 years ago, can you recreate these kind of communities in the United States? Mm-hmm. So they began doing this in a place called Albert Lea, Minnesota. And since then, they've been into about 50 communities across the United States. And so they really are the gold standard. They are really moving the needle when it comes to community health and wellness in these communities that they've gone into. So we're trying to bring them into Erie County to see if we could create a Blue Zone community here, and we landed on Corey. So Corey is going to be really the leader, I think, in Erie County, and what we'd like to do eventually is have it throughout the county. But Corey is the community where Blue Zones is going to be implemented. So since early this year, since about January, they've been having all sorts of community meetings. They've had the experts come from the Blue Zone team. Mm-hmm. They've done walking tours and lots of listening, and then the community itself has put together what they call their blueprint. And once all of this gets ironed out next month in June, they're going to actually have their kickoff, and then for 3 years it'll be very intensive. Blue Zones team will be working with the community of Corey to really make them a community where people can live the longest and the healthiest.
Is this a nonprofit organization?
No, they are
Is it government?
They are a for-profit, and we
okay.
are not using taxpayer dollars to do this. So I think people need to understand that.
Yeah.
So we actually got sponsors, and the sponsors are Highmark Allegheny Health Network, UPMC, and LECOM, which makes sense because these are the people responsible for our health and wellness from a medical standpoint, and also our main insurers in this region. And so those three have generously become the major sponsors of this program, and I'm excited to see the results of this. I can tell you I was in Fort Worth, Texas for a wedding in the fall, and I went down and I met with their Blue Zone coordinator down there because that's the largest city in the country to do this. The results have been staggering. I mean, just take smoking rates. They've dropped them 38%. That's unheard of anymore. And just their sense of purpose and their community pride. And this man that I sat down with was going on and on about just the positive changes that have happened. And one of the really exciting things about Corey is the first community in the Northeast. Really east of the Mississippi, the only communities are a couple in Florida. Really? And so we are kind of leading the way when it comes to the Northeast in terms of trying to move this program forward.
So what are the logistics? I know we have other things to cover, but quickly, how does
Sure.
this get organized? It's just
So there's 3 people who are hired by Blue Zone to every day be in Corey working with this.
Every day?
Every day. They work with the school districts. They work with restaurants. They work with grocery stores. They work with faith organizations. They'll do purpose workshops, going back to that sense of purpose.
Yeah.
They'll do them in the schools, and they'll do them with citizens in the general community. They'll work with this is a great example. When you go to a restaurant and you sit down and you order a sandwich, they usually either give you fries or chips.
Yeah.
If you don't want those, you have to say, could I have a salad instead, or could I have fruit instead? Yeah. Well, they try to get restaurants to do the opposite. So the default is the healthy.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
when you order your sandwich, it would come with maybe salad or fruit. If you want your fries or chips, you just have to ask for them. So what they try to do is make the healthy choice the easy choice. They're working with the city of Corey to create more bike and walk and parks and walkways and parks, things that people can get out and be active. And again, that natural movement, they do these things called walking school buses, which I find fascinating. A lot of times our students aren't walking anymore. I mean, I think we're down to about 10% of the students in the country walking to school. And back in the day, it used to be 90%. So this helps with the sense of purpose, too. So maybe they find a retired person who gets up in the morning, goes outside, knocks on the first door, gets Johnny, walks a few doors further and picks up Susie. And then eventually they have a whole busload walking to school. And then when they get to the school, they do a little bit of exercise. They do a little bit of meditation, maybe a little bit of yoga. And the kids, they say, come to school completely in a different mindset, ready to learn, just by moving their bodies a little bit and getting their minds in the right places. So those are some of the things that Blue Zones will be doing in Corey, and I'm excited to see the results.
You picked a good community. We did in our town, WQL TV did in our town, Corey. The folks there are motivated. They're highly educated folks. They have economic development at heart, industrial development at heart. I'm preaching to the choir.
No, they
to
really.
you, but I think people in Erie need to take a ride down there. Those folks are doing incredible things.
They are. There's a
Yeah.
lot going on in Corey right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're Main Street. There's some stores that just turned Main Street around. There's some great stores. There's a great little
Yep.
children's dress shop that I go down there and buy things for my granddaughters. But, take a trip to Corey if you
But
are
their
listening.
chamber
And,
folks are.
and get out
it's
there
a
and
heavily
see.
populated chamber. They're all involved.
Yeah, go down in
Yeah.
there and see what's going on in Corey and watch it over the next
Yeah.
few years. They're going to see some transformation.
Well, let's go to technology, which is near and dear to my heart anyway. The public safety radio system, it's the next generation technology. Are those little towers with the white flying saucer disc?
Well,
at
they're
the
big
top?
ters, actually.
They're big towers. Yeah, they are
They're
big.
100 and some feet high,
they are.
usually.
But-
So what happened is and this happened as I was running for this position, over 6 years ago, the public safety community, so these are our firefighters and our EMTs and such, were coming up to me and saying, our radio system is dangerous. We cannot talk to each other from one agency to another. This has been going on since the tornadoes of Albion in 1985. And then, of course, after 9/11, it was a national conversation about our radio systems and how our first responders need to talk to each other. So I said this is a priority. This is a number one priority when I came into office. John Grappy, who's my director of public safety, I have to give him a lot of credit. He helped to truly bring all the public safety community together around one system. They all had many different systems on different frequencies, and I've learned a lot more about radio systems than I ever thought I would. But that took a lot of meetings. We had, for the first year, was just a lot of meetings with people and listening to them and getting ideas. We were able then to secure the funding through county council. Actually, one of the largest investments the county government has ever made in anything.
Really?
It's $26 million investment into this system. And the way I always look at it is, what's a life worth, and what's all of our lives worth? Yeah. So this system will go live here in the summertime, and this year we have been working on this since I got into office, basically. But the project's about a year or so behind where we thought it would be, but there was all sorts of things that happened. The FEC licenses with Canada, you don't realize how complex those are, but because we're so close, you do here, but most of the citizens don't. When you're so close to we wanted to make sure we had good coverage along the lake, which everyone knows is actually always an issue for us when you have a cell phone, for example. So we want to make sure our first responders, if they're on Presque Isle or if they're just trying to do a rescue off the water, has as good a coverage as the first responder in the middle of the city of Erie or in some of our rural areas. And so we have a guarantee of 95% of the coverage, 95% of the time, and they hope to make it better than that, and we assume it'll be better than that. But that's a system that we are all going to be proud of, and the first responders are thrilled. For years as we were going through this, many of them really didn't believe we'd ever truly get it done and make it happen, but it's happening.
In other words, it's like a giant digital interconnecting
system.
So
we have a number of these towers, and there's microwave systems on the towers, and they're all redundant. Police, if one goes down, it switches the other way. So this is, and then the county decided, part of the cost was the county decided to give everyone all their equipment the first out of the gate.
Oh, wow.
So we're providing the radios, the handhelds, the portables, to all, this would be all police departments, including our university police departments. This would include all of our firefighters, whether they're paid or they are volunteer. This includes our first responders in terms of ambulance. So all of those people in that public safety arena will all be on the same channels. Well, if for some of their
emergency
police, the people who are driving the ambulances for sure, and then others will have radios that can connect in. But this is an example. A few years ago, there was a terrible fire on Lighthouse Street in Erie, and 3 houses burnt down, and I believe 1 person died in those fires. So they asked Lawrence Park to come in as mutual aid, which often happens in a big fire. But the City of Erie Fire couldn't talk to the Lawrence Park fire. So they basically had to run up the street to tell them that they needed more water. And, I mean, that's just a little example, but that was happening all the time. And so when you're in that moment of greatest need, you want people to be able to respond as quick as they can. And if we had a really large disaster in our community, as we've seen in other places across the country, you would want everyone to be able to talk to each other. And that's what's going to happen.
And are we one of few, or
we'll have probably the best system in Pennsylvania when we get done. Right? State of the art, and we'll be leading the nation in terms of this system. And other communities are going this way also, but we just are a little bit ahead of the game.
So if you had something severe like a tornado again, or a school fire, or something more critical, or a hospital emergency,
police can't talk to fire. It's dangerous. There was an incident a few years ago in McDowell High School. School was out, but somebody was setting fires in the school. And so they brought the firemen in first, but then they realized this person was still in the school, so now the policemen were in the school. Well, the policemen couldn't talk to the firemen. That's a dangerous situation. Absolutely. As they're trying to fight fires and policemen are in there with guns. So, again, we've got to make sure everyone can talk to each other.
I think if people look this project up online, it's ideal. And we're one of the first, if one of the best. Yes,
and I'm very proud of what we're doing. And I think as you talk to the first responders, those people who are out there helping you every day, you'll hear from them.
And everybody gets new equipment? Is that how that works?
Every entity gets a new handheld, new portables, new radios, and that unto itself is a huge value. It's about a $6 million value.
That's incredible. That's impressive to have that technology here.
Yes.
That's great. That's a great project. We go down to the library. I've seen the Idea Lab. That is a lot of fun. That is a great idea. And as you were encouraging entrepreneurship in the community, tell us how this works.
Well, I have to give credit to Mary Rennie, who was the library director at the time. Yeah. And she, when I first came in, she had this idea and floated it by me. And I said, Mary, sounds fantastic. Yeah. She said, libraries can't just be about collections. They've got to be about connecting the community. And, of course, libraries have always been about resource and getting the information you need. We know we have to build up our entrepreneurial community in Erie to be a successful community. And the universities are doing a great job with that, as are many other entities in the Innovation District, et cetera. And the library can be part of that. Libraries are the great equalizer. I think everyone feels comfortable walking into the library, and certainly everyone is welcome, and it's free. So Mary had this idea for the Idea Lab, and if you haven't been to the Blasco, get down there and check it out. Mm-hmm. You can go down there and utilize all sorts of equipment and take all sorts of classes. We have 3D printers, so I've seen entrepreneurs in there doing a prototype of something that they want to make and they have an idea for, and the resources in that library, the librarians that are in there will help them do that. We have everything all the way to sewing machines and knitting needles. I ran into a woman who was down there sewing one day, and she was laid off for a little while, and she said, this is my therapy. I come in here and I sew. I don't have a sewing machine at home, but I love to sew. So she's using this equipment in the library until she gets back to work. And then there's all sorts of classes. Like I said, we have classes for those entrepreneurs. But when they're ready, then we say, look, now is the time for you to go up to the SBDC at Gannon. Or now is the time for you to go to Barron and take this prototype and work with their engineering students to create your business. Now it's time to go to Edinburgh and get the marketing work that you need done. Because there's beehives, they call them beehives, in those 4 universities that are there to help the universities. And we consider us at the library to be the little beehive. We're the feeder into that larger beehive system. Because people who've never been, for example, to college don't feel that comfortable walking onto a college campus and into those offices, but they feel comfortable coming to the library. They can get started there, and then we move them on to the resources. We're not replacing the resources that are already here. Right. And then part of that Idea Lab, we also have a media lab, which is phenomenal.
Oh, okay.
And that media lab has state-of-the-art equipment, just like you have here at QLN. Yeah. And people can go down there and they can make their own podcasts. They can do their own music video. They can, anything that you need to do in a media lab, you have the resource free to do it there at the library.
And young people, they're clever. They know how to do this. They have no place to do it.
Exactly. And this is a place where they can go.
So this brings our library into the 21st century.
It really does. Yeah. We've created a new teen space to give our teens their own space. So if you are a teenager, you can go in and use this beautiful new space. And when we open it up, I told the teens, I said, I want you to realize how much we value you. Look at the real estate we gave you. And we gave them real estate on the first floor that looks right out over onto the flagship Niagara. So it's a beautiful space for them. Yeah. But I do think that we have to encourage our teens to come and use the resources that we have at the library.
Another That's a batch of outstanding projects.
Yes, then there's just so much more going on at the library. We have a new library director who comes to us from the Library of Congress, retired to Erie, saw the job opening, decided to jump back into the workforce, but brings with him a national set of skills and knowledge and contacts. So he's only been with us a few weeks, but I'm excited to see what he's going to actually bring to enhance what Mary Rennie started.
And the library truly is an important community asset.
It certainly is.
Great job on that. This is another You've moved into all the technology areas.
Well, we're trying to get into the technology before it becomes obsolete.
Yeah, the library, the firefighters, our police, and our community servants all being technologically enabled. The library being enabled. The data center now. How does this work?
Oh gosh, the data center is a phenomenal tool.
You're on the cutting edge again. You're growing something that other communities may not have.
So, James Grunke is the new head of the chamber, and when he saw our data center that we were just creating when he came, he said, "You have something that almost no community in the United States have. Just a handful of communities have with this data center." And it's a great tool that our municipalities are using, the chamber is using, our private businesses are using, even to the point. We're now working on some of the vital signs work that has been done by the Community Foundation. So it really it's GIS work, which is spatial work. We can make maps and layer on top of each other. Mm-hmm. But if you go on the Erie County website to the planning department, or you can go on to Choose Erie, which is kind of an economic tool to help people get into our community and find out about it. Hit on the county data center. You can go on there and find out, for example, where vacant land is. You can find out where the schools are, the roads, the infrastructure. You can layer all these things together. It's a great economic development tool. And we also have ways for us to gather all sorts of data. If we want to look at how many people are working in certain industries in our community. There's just an unbelievable amount of information that you can find from this data center. And some of this we're doing for fee for service. For example, we have a couple partners, one of them being the city and one of them being the chamber. They've actually paid a fee to help keep this data center up and going so they can use this, like the more sophisticated parts of the tools where our employees are actually pulling this data out. And then we have some private industries who've come to us and say, for a fee, would you pull this data together for us? And we can do that. And they can look at what the return on investment would be, for example, if they're going to build another facility.
Absolutely.
You could go on there if you want to even open up a coffee shop. You can go on there and see where all the coffee shops are in Erie County, where your client, and you want to make that coffee shop kind of accessible to a certain demographic. You can find that too, and you can layer this all, and you can figure out exactly where to put your coffee shop in Erie County. It's pretty cool stuff.
Is this a physical facility?
It's housed at it's a virtual. It's housed at the Erie County Planning Department, and there's a couple individuals who are running the data, but you can do this from your computer at home.
Right. So it's not like the library. You have to physically
No, you don't go there. You just do it off your computer. So you sit in the comfort of your own home and go on that.
This has to be interesting to folks from out of town who want to come here.
Well, so if you're a site selector, for example, you will be able, and that's why we have this Choose Erie site. They can go on there. They would hit right onto the data center. They can start to find out, okay, does this community even have the kind of resource I need for this business that I'm looking to help find a new location for? And that's why this is so key that we have this information available.
Before we run out of time, broadband.
Oh, broadband.
I mean, you go to Europe and they have wireless,
exactly.
Wide area Wi-Fi, meaning they cover whole cities with Wi-Fi. One tower.
This country has really fallen behind in terms of being able to provide the kind of high-speed internet access that everyone needs. In order, if you're a student, you need it. If you're going to have a business, you need it. And honestly, all of us, just as regular citizens, need it for all sorts of research that we're trying to do. So we have been trying to figure out how we can fund or how we can provide better service to about 25% of our county who really doesn't have great access. And so we have a survey that's going out, broadband.eriecountypa.gov. Mm-hmm. And I would suggest that anyone listening to this who wants to put on there, like, what kind of service you have at your home, so we have some idea of where particularly the bad service areas are in our region. I mean, we have a general map, but we'd like to get more granular on this. So my IT director, Eric Friedman, is heading up this project, and then as money becomes available, which it is becoming available from both the state and federal government, we would know where more to target any effort that we might be making. So again, that's broadband.eriecountypa.gov, brand new website up with a survey on it that people can access to give us their information about their specific location where they're living at.
And you're getting support from the community for all this, right? People have to be excited about it.
Well, people have been talking to us for a long time about how poor their service is and can't we as county government do something. And, of course, we know it's a very expensive fix, but we want to make sure that we're ready for any monies that are becoming available from the state and the feds. Particularly the feds are putting some serious money into broadband access.
And we can take advantage of that money.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Especially if we have the information. But we need the citizens to help us with that.
We have a couple minutes left. What are your where do you see the county next couple of years? I was going to say, what are your plans? This is embarrassing for me to have asked you that because it's all right here, and these generate jobs.
They do. And, I'm very bullish on this community right now. Yeah. I see it every day. And I know not every person's feeling it yet, not every person's seeing it, but there's so much that's been going on. And what I really love and think is probably the most impactful is that we are really coming together and working as one. We are going to Harrisburg, for example, with one voice when it comes to funding. What are our priorities in this community? I'm in so many meetings where it's the private sector, with the government, with the nonprofit sector, all talking about the big issues, whether it's the Bayfront and better connection to the city at the Bayfront, or whether it's some of these economic development issues that we're dealing with. I also see that the good work that's started to happen in the city with their comprehensive planning and they're being much more targeted, that is really becoming the norm in some of our outer communities. Albion recently did a comprehensive plan. Very, very doable, implementable comprehensive plan. They're starting to work on that. Green Township's now working on theirs. We already talked a little bit about Corey and the work being done in Corey, which is very exciting to see. So I see it not only in Erie City, but I see this, they were sort of like the stone thrown in the pond, and then it ripples out.
Yeah.
I see this rippling out throughout our whole county, and I feel very confident that 5 years from now, we're going to look back and say, wow, things have changed quite dramatically for the better.
And you work with all the municipalities. This is the one thing that people have complained over we don't come together. We maybe should become a huge municipal. I don't know what happened with that argument, but you're doing this.
Right. I don't know that there's the political will to become just one big municipal government.
You're gluing things together in a different way.
We do it. Yeah. We're doing it through our planning department. We're doing it through our library. We're doing it through our public safety. Yeah. And I think that's the better way to do it, is to say, how can we be a partner with all these communities? And we are sort of the one that brings them all together. Right. And that's one of the things I think is my job, is to convene, to bring whether it's the municipalities at the table or to bring other entities to the table as a county executive. That's something I'm able to do, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of that.
I always regret saying we run out of time.
It goes so quickly.
You have an open invitation to come back to talk. Well, you've addressed 5 huge points here, 6 actually, where we're going in essence, and we are grateful for your visit today.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's always great to be with you and to talk about the exciting things happening in Erie County.
Kathy Dahlkemper, our county executive, and I'm allowed to say you're doing a great job. That's my opinion. I'm allowed to have one, and I'm sure the audience now appreciates some of the things that you're doing, and I'm glad they learned about something today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On NPR News, it's all about the story.
People can surprise you anytime.
The people behind movies, books, and music.
Music is like a Rorschach test, and people hear what they want to hear.
I'm Arun Roth, the new host of All Things Considered from NPR News, now coming to you every weekend from NPR West in Southern California.
Sunday afternoon at 5 on WQLN Radio. Hi, this is Jeff Hanley, host of Jazz Happening Now. Each week we listen to some of the latest jazz recordings, and I think you'll be thrilled by what today's jazz musicians are doing and saying. The recording industry has changed, but the music is as alive and as vibrant as ever. The future of jazz is happening right now, if you just listen. And please do. Sunday night at 6 on WQLN Radio.
Welcome to We Question and Learn. We've got a couple of gentlemen that kindly agreed to come up to the station to record this program today. The executive director of Perseus House, Mark Amendola.
Thanks for having us,
See you.
Tom.
This is
Good to
radio.
see you.
Still good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a pleasure to have you here. And Dr. Nick Viglione, the Chief Educational Officer. I like the CEO they put at the end of your name, and don't tell people that stands for educational.
Well, that's just
Is
one
it
of the
okay?
things. It's okay.
and your responsibility is the charter school. So without messing up the hierarchy of the organization, I'm going to ask you both how this works. And now
Sure.
you're the executive director,
Sure.
so could you give
Sure.
us the 50,000-foot view of Perseus House?
There's two boards. There's two corporations, Perseus House, Inc., and then Perseus House Charter School of Excellence. Nick is the administrator for the Charter School of Excellence. Let me start with Perseus House, and then Nick will get into the charter school.
Great.
Perseus House has been around since 1971, started with a grant from the Vickery Foundation, and Steve McDermott, who was the he developed the program, went to Erie County to the juvenile court and said, if we took these kids that were experiencing problems in the community, at school, at home, and gave them a home-like environment, could we change their behaviors? Could we help families? Could we help communities? And we still have the house on West 26th Street between Peach and Sassafras, and we have one of our Medicaid programs are there. And actually, Steve and his wife and his son lived in the house for a period of time with maybe 6 or 7 clients, and then developed from that, developed into more group homes. We have properties now. Now we have 98 residential beds. We have a property out in Spartansburg in Bloomfield Township. Has 2 on 10 acres. Has 2 12-bed units. One is a juvenile delinquency program for females. The other is a Medicaid program, mental health, juvenile justice for females. No, that's a different program, and I'll explain that. That's okay.
I'm sorry.
And then in Erie, where our main office is located at 1511 Peach Street, which our central office is, we have a 16-bed shelter that we provide for Erie County, child welfare and juvenile probation. And those are kids who may or may not have initially been moving into the system, but are either waiting adjudication, delinquent or neglected, and or waiting for disposition, waiting to go someplace. We have a 12-bed male unit in that building that is a Medicaid reimbursed program. And when I say Medicaid, what that means is that has to be determined by a psychiatrist to be medically necessary, has to meet the Medicaid criteria for that. So there's 12 males in that program from all over the state of Pennsylvania. We have contracts with multiple counties, MCOs in the state of Pennsylvania. Florence Crittenton, as you mentioned, has been around since in the late 60s, and originally was designed for adolescents who became pregnant, would go away for a period of time during their pregnancy and then return home. Now it is what we would call a fee-for-service program. So it has a maternity and a mother-baby program. And so we get pregnant adolescents in their second and third trimesters. Ironically, or not so ironically, they don't have a lot of prenatal care. So we want to make sure that it's a healthy pregnancy. And then the second part of that is our mother-baby program. And the mother-baby program is designed to really assess. We have a psychiatrist, Dr. Marianne Elbaugh, who actually does a nurturing assessment. And really, can't a 14-year-old, really nurture and care for a baby, but she's going to decide what's going to be the best disposition for that, what's going to be the best environment. One of the things that we're seeing in that program is we're seeing more and more grandparents raising their kids. We're seeing more and more their kids' kids. We're seeing more and more grandparents that are raising their grandkids. And
you serve how many individuals in a community?
On an annual basis, anywhere from 2,700 to 3,000, and that's everything.
I want everybody to understand
program,
how large
from
this
the
is.
charter school, we have community-based programs. We have a contract with the county intensive juvenile delinquency program, And those are case managers in schools that work with kids. And the goal there is try to keep them, kids that may be on the fence, as it were, as getting into the system, the child welfare or the juvenile probation, juvenile justice system. And we're trying to work with them to keep them out of the system, to keep them so they'll never get open with the system. We have a court diversion program. We have a program where kids go to court and they are typically ordered or deferred or ordered to a facility or a program, but then they come to us on a weekend, and we use our 1511 Peachtree building for that program. And programming is Friday after school, Saturday all day, Sunday all day, and then they live at home and go to their home school, and then they're case managed through the course of the week. And the benefit of that is twofold. Number one, they're staying in the community, and we're working with them and their families and trying to keep them in school. And it's about a third of the cost or so less than expensive residential care. So, and we've been operating that program since 1996. Actually started in a school, started at Strong Vincent, because the Erie School District is one of the partners, and we actually operated the program on the weekend. And then ultimately we were on West 26th Street, we moved our central office to Peach Street. We then now operate that program. So during the day, the charter school, we have our leadership site, which Nick will explain there, and then on the weekend we have the collaborative intensive
And how many
treatment program.
I call them students. You laugh when I do that, but that's what they are.
They are, sure, we're educating them.
How many students are you responsible for? I thought it was about 500, 400.
Well, at any given time.
In the special program for the 18, say, 24-year-olds or whatever age.
Well, we can serve up to age 21.
21.
In the charter school, there's up to 600 kids that we could serve, students that we could serve. But on any given day on the Perseus House side, we could have 500-600 kids in that we would have contact with. Or I came to Perseus House in 1994. The vision was that I would not necessarily replicate what somebody was doing in the community. If there's a lot of human service agencies in the Erie community, and we took a look at it from a needs point of view. What was the needs of the community, and what was the needs in terms of residential care. My own experience is I worked at Harbor Creek Youth Services for 12 years.
Yes.
I am a LSW in the state of Pennsylvania, so I've had a private practice. I worked in a school-based program, so I've had a breadth of experience. So I understood those programs and how they operated. So as we started developing programs, it was really about not replicating what somebody was doing well, but how do we meet that need in the community that may not be
Steve
met.
would have been proud of you.
Steve, I got to know Steve a little
I did
bit,
too.
And Steve had an idea. Steve had a lot of guts. Steve had a lot of courage. Steve did what he did without knowing at all whether or not it would work.
And he was a very caring individual.
Oh, yeah.
He went out of his way for these young people.
Yeah, so it was his idea, and so we grew. When I came to Perseus House, just to give you a scope, there were 36 residential beds. The budget was about $1 million, and there were 60 employees. Now, between the charter school, Perseus House is about $12 million. The charter school is about $7.5, so close to $20 million. And we have about 550, 560 full-time part-time
Well, let's
staff.
think about this so folks who are living here understand. This is $20 million being on something to help improve and protect our community and to advance these human beings.
And different levels, right?
At different
Because
levels,
At the deepest end, we have two enhanced residential programs, one 6-bed, one for male, which is in the 26th Street facility, one for females. And so that's the most expensive, 24 hours a day, therapy every day, individual therapy, group therapy, family therapy every week, versus intensive juvenile delinquency, which is more school-based contact.
Where does that money come from? I know it's a biting question.
Yeah.
Maybe it isn't.
No, it's a good question. Obviously, on the school side, and Nick will explain this more, the money follows the student. So wherever that student comes, one important fact, though, is that we have to live within the confines of our budget. We're not a taxing entity. So if districts come in at an unbalanced budget, they could raise millage. I know boards don't like to do that.
Right.
But that we have to live within the confines of our budget. On the Perseus House side, it's Title 4E. It's federal dollars. So it's federal dollars that the state pulls down, that the county's budget. They have a needs-based assessment budget process that they go through. And then the other programs are funded per service, which primarily is federal dollars. There's some state dollars, some state match. some very little county match, but for all intents and purposes, it's federal dollars.
And do you fundraise? Do you get to fundraise?
We do fundraise.
Do you?
You know, we certainly haven't done as much as we've done in the past, and you're certainly aware of that.
Yep.
Well, one of the problems was the return on that investment, the return on the amount of dollars that would come in. Has really been very, very challenging. It's a lot of energy and
we
a lot of
could
effort.
start another radio program and go hours explaining that.
But we do, and even the charter school has received earned income tax credit. You know.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And
And while we're on that topic, I'm going to let you introduce Nick.
Yeah, Nick Viglione
Yeah.
Is the CEO, as you mentioned, of
Yep.
the Charter School of Excellence. Nick has very similar experiences as I do.
Mm-hmm.
Worked in residential, came to us working at Wilson Middle School as a case manager, and worked with students on the bubble, as it were, at Wilson Middle School, but also supervised our alternative programs. So Nick has a breadth of experiences.
And Nick, welcome.
I think that if you expand on what Mark previously mentioned, the charter school really is in collaboration with the spirit, the philosophies of Perseus House. And, you know, I guess maybe let me start from the beginning and do a quick walkthrough to get to current. So I started at Perseus House in 1998, and as Mark mentioned, started off as a case manager, behavior specialist as Perseus House contracted with Erie, then moved into alternative education. And around 2002, the City of Erie School District was really finding that there were kids that were just not getting their needs met, and the evidence of that was the number of students that enrolled in ninth grade compared to the outcome of that same population in 12th grade. And there was just a big gap of kids that, you know, just were not finding the right fit. And what we had experienced running alternative education is a different way to connect with those kids and meet their academic needs. In addition, though, meet their social emotional needs. And there's where the big twist comes in, so to speak, that, you know, the kids really wanted to stay with us, but alternative ed was a short-term stay. So that's where really the concept of the charter school came. So Mark and Perseus House, in collaboration with the City of Erie, had this thought of, okay, well, can there be a different type of school? Not a school that's for behaviorally challenged kids, but a school that just has a different fit and a different feel, something that's non-traditional. Going back to what Mark said, there's no intention to replicate a system that's already in existence. So what could we do that's different? And that's where the Charter School of Excellence originated from in 2003.
Explain the ambiance. This is where I wish we were doing a television program. It's totally different than anything I've ever seen.
Well, thank you, because that's really the goal. The goal is to create an academic environment, safe, small learning environment where kids can, you know, express themselves, be who they are. And also, the big difference is the way that our instructional strategies are directed. Meaning that we have a lot of kids that come to us that are behind academically for whatever reason. Lots of great kids, by the way. Just because they're behind academically, I don't want your listeners to equate that with negative behaviors or negative in any way. There's a lot of very good kids. However, 23% of our kids are English learners, so they are refugees that come in to the States. And there's a rationale as to why one would be behind academically. Some of our kids, prior to coming to Erie as one of the resettlement zones, really had limited educational experiences.
I hear some didn't even speak English.
We have many students that do not speak English or very limited English.
Limited, yeah. So you're managing them from ground zero.
We do. We absolutely do. Our teachers and our whole environment is really geared towards acquiescing to being a prescriptive approach to kids, and that's, I believe, that's
wonderful.
one of the mainstays of what we do. That I certainly feel good about working in an environment where the focus is really on students and
How did you design it? Now you have a huge, I may be wrong, cooking facility? Am I, or a huge cafeteria facility?
No, we do. At our Skills Center location, that's our one of our high school locations. That's at Level Place on 13th and French.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, that concept really derived from conversations with Mark and our previous associate executive director, who really had this idea of, well, can't we do something that would enhance the skill sets of our kids and bring them into the mix?
It's huge. This is a huge facility.
Yeah, and so what that ended up turning into, Tom, was we created an environment that allows kids high interest electives. That's really the focus. We're not a vocational school, so it's all electives like you would find in traditional schools. But what we've chosen to do is use culinary as a vehicle to teach kids soft skill development. And there really is the silver lining in the concept.
Isn't that clever? Because you want people to be learning math, English, foreign students becoming what better way? You have to count. You have to become a logistician. You have to understand ordering stock, cooking food.
Absolutely.
Being polite to a customer.
All of those interpersonal skills that, and we worked with Mercyhurst University early on, and they did a study in the community and interviewed and surveyed over 40 hospitality facilities, restaurants, hotels, those sorts. And, hands down, the biggest response from local employers was that we can teach kids the skills that we need them, the tasks that we need them to know. What we don't want to teach is work ethic and those soft skill development. So our whole focus at Skills with that culinary program is really how to be a good worker, how to come to school on time, how to come to work on time. How to call off, how to deal with disgruntled customers.
How to deal with other employees.
How to deal with each other. And, so that's the focus of our...
And how large is this?
Well, let me just back up a second.
Sure,
And Nick can explain the numbers. We have a work experience program on the Perseus side that we've done for years? Engaged for probably 20 years. And, clients have to go through the interview process, and then they're pulled out of school and they work for a full day on projects around the agency. And one of the Phil Treadway, who was a great board member, Erie Molded Plastics, would say to us, "Hey, I'm gonna have to hire somebody on a mold injection machine, on a plastic injection machine. I don't have to train them how to do that. What I don't want to train them is, just as you were saying, how do you show up to work on time? How do you communicate within a team? How do you, if you're sick, you call in not 2 minutes before you show up for work? How do you engage in those soft skills?" So we put together a curriculum that taught not only those soft skills, but working on the job. We have a worksite supervisor that we budget for, and every student, every client that comes in has the opportunity to engage in that program. So very similar to what we do on the charter school side. The nice thing is that we actually can push kids out in the community. We really don't do that on the Perseus side because they are residential. But we have 40 community partners.
Absolutely.
On your side.
On the charter school side. So.
Where did the money come for all that geography? You tell everybody where you are, by the way, the charter school.
Charter school, we have 2 locations. We have a middle school, which is the Discovery Center, serves students in grades 6 through 8. And we also have the Skills Center, which is a high school serving students in grades 9 through 12.
Place?
Those are both located at Level Place,
correct,
on 13th and French. And then we have a third site location, which is another high school location serving grades 9 through 12 students. And that's at 1511 Peach, where our central office is located that Mark had previously spoke about. And altogether...
who designed all that for you? Did you guys do this based on your experience dealing with students, or did you have an outside party? There is an ambiance to this thing.
We had an architect come in, and from the overarching assumption was that it couldn't look like a regular school to start with.
And there's a reason for that. Right?
Well, because kids traditionally have not done well. These are students that have not traditionally done well.
These particular students need a different environment.
to be able to be successful. If you walked through Lovell Place, which I believe you've been through,
many times.
It's an open air facility.
Yeah.
We have some closed classrooms, but
Yeah.
it's open air, and so.
And
the
the
field,
top-
the
and the
field
top-
there is more business.
It seems like there's more things to do. I mean, it's
business
physical.
college feel is what
Yeah,
the
thank
environment
you.
is trying to replicate.
Yeah. You have art, but you still have the traditional skill sets.
Absolutely, we
Right.
certainly do. We have
Yeah.
many kids that are taking dual enrollment courses as an example. We have,
Which is
that's where students can take college credits while they're in high school.
Oh, wow.
So we have kids that go to Gannon. Edinburgh University comes and we work with them. They provide a class on site for us. So kids are right now the class that's being taught at the Skills Center is on sports ethics. So that's the college course that our kids are getting credit.
But you ask about funding. You ask about funding,
yeah.
and in most districts, the parent would pay for that dual enrollment class, for that college class.
Oh, wow.
We budget it. As long as students get a C, then we pay for it. So we budget it. We put it in the budget because we have a sense of how many students are going to enroll, are going to get into dual enrollment.
Yeah.
So
and the charter school, how's that funded? Is that all under your umbrella? No, it's separate.
So it's two separate. If you think of Perseus House, as Mark mentioned, the Perseus House Inc. with more of the delinquency and the residential and the preventative courses in schools and applications. And then you think of the other half of the branch is the charter school. So there's two separate boards, two separate funding streams. And
very early, it was clear from Pennsylvania Department of Education that monies could not be commingled. Monies had to be could not be commingled. So
and that's good because then you
Sure.
can justify how you're spending the money, and you can
Very
also
clear.
measure your outcomes, and then
Very clear.
And I think the community should get a little more of an overview of what you guys do because you're solving a huge problem. You hear people complain about dropouts, school dropouts, crime, drugs, and of course you have the cocaine and the other addictions that are permeating the community. You must see a lot of this then, maybe.
We do.
Yeah.
I mean, opioid addiction kind
Opiates is a
of
big deal.
weaves itself into many relationships.
Yeah.
And so we have on the residential side, we have Pennsylvania's mandated to do student assistance programming in school, meaning that schools are mandated to provide drug and alcohol and mental health assessment. So Perseus House is not a drug and alcohol provider. We are a mental health provider, delinquency provider. Yeah. So we purchased a parochial school on the east side, and that's where our residential kids go to school. And there are we have Pyramid Healthcare. We've had a relation for a long time, so they'll go in and do drug and alcohol assessment. And on the school side, on the charter school side,
at this very similar. We work with outside providers to provide any services that our students may need, and we certainly adhere to the state mandate of the Student Assistance Program, which is intended to support kids with those sorts of needs. And our data shows that our kids are accessing services when needed and moving themselves forward.
We only have about 5 minutes left, but let me ask Mark first. Mark, what do you see the outcome to all the work you've put in over more than 2 decades and all the hard work you personally put into it? What's the outcome, and where do you see all this going? And of course, you're responsive to the community, so there's a lot of things you are going to face in the future that are brand new problems.
Sure. Yeah, there sure are.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I think that if we, very generally, as a kid walks through the door, and it's multi-problematic. 20, 30 years ago, there might have been 1 or 2 problems. Now it's so layered. There's so many trauma experiences that kids are having right now. And so I think that if we can reduce those kinds of reactions that they have within their interpersonal relationships, and if we can help them heal from those traumatic experiences, they're gonna move into adulthood in a much better place. We use the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study. Dr. Felitti and the CDC looked at impact of trauma over the lifespan, and they wanted to see if someone had experienced these traumas, whether it be physical, sexual, emotional, whatever it was, what would impact their physical health. And what they found out was in the initial study, there's a calculator. You score up to 10. Have you ever been abused? Anyone in your family been exposed to alcoholism? 1, right? There's 10 questions, so up to 10. Wow. If you scored 4 or more, you died 10 years earlier than your cohort group. Recently, they just redid the study.
that's an
If you
average.
score, and that is an average,
Yeah.
and if you score 6 or more, you die 20 years more than your cohort group.
Wow.
So when you say ultimately, what are we trying to do? We're certainly trying to make it better in terms of from when they walked in the door. Ultimately, we may be putting years on their lives. What better work could there be to do?
Plus, you're solving a huge societal problem.
We hope. We hope it has a ripple effect. No doubt about it.
Yeah. And then you move over to the charter school, and your objectives.
So our objectives are
How are you meeting those objectives?
we're meeting the needs of the students that just simply don't fit well
Someplace.
in their previous
And that's not
environments.
criticizing
Not
our
at all.
other.
Not at all.
I think I'm glad you said
our
that.
other
because
educational facilities are excellent. You're
They
not.
are excellent.
You're not competing.
we're not, and I think I'm glad you brought
You're
that
solving
up.
a
because
problem.
We're just another
little bit.
opportunity for kids, and that's not a negative to any other
No.
entity.
No.
It's I use the analogy of somebody going to look for employment. When you go for an interview, not only do you want the company to like you, but you also have to like the company. And that's if you use that analogy, that's really what we're up
So
to.
you're not competing. You're helping the education.
We're helping the
system
education
in this
system,
community.
and we're finding success. We've graduated over 900 students that, quite frankly, may have struggled elsewhere. We certainly are meeting the goals and expectations from our families. They're choosing to send their kids to us, and I think the long-term goal is when kids graduate from us, we want them to be productive members of the community and contribute.
Plus,
And-
you're absorbing folks that have come from other countries.
Absolutely. It's a
They
community.
They're here.
Yeah.
They need to be participatory.
And we're providing jobs. I mean, we
And provide- oh, that's right.
we're
How many
providing-
employees do you
well,
have?
up to around 554 and part-time. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
everybody on
That's
both
everybody.
sides.
Yeah, that's a lot of
We're
folks,
still
yeah.
providing health insurance and benefits and
Yeah.
short and long-term disability. So
Yeah, and you have to have certain qualifications to work
you
at
sure
Perseus.
do.
You
Yeah,
can't
and
just walk in.
You sure do.
It's,
You have to have the ability to work with.
So that the credentialing, the education, and you provide that training as well sometimes?
We do.
Yeah.
We provide aggression replacement training. We're a national training site for life-based crisis intervention, which is a training for staff. How do you intervene? So we do train staff on models.
A minute left, so I'm going to say thank you both.
Thank you.
It's an inspiration. You cover. I don't think people understand your footprint. It's a Venn diagram. It's a pyramid chart that has thousands of people involved, and you're solving a huge problem. So we're going to have you back.
Appreciate
The
it.
thanks.
easiest way is to invite you back, if that's okay.
And if we could also just mention our
Yeah.
websites are full
That's
of
what I was saying.
information.
How do you find each of you?
Yeah, PerseusHouse.org, literally PERSEUS house.org.
PerseusHouse.org.
House.org.
And there's a link to the charter school, or you can look us up at charterschoolofexcellence.org.
And that's a brand name for you.
That's
and,
correct.
You are well named. Mark Amendola, Executive Director of Perseus House, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Dr. Nick Viglione, Chief Educational Officer, as Mark called you CEO. You're the boss.
I'm Nick,
This
and
is
doing
Nick.
doing what we do.
Yeah, and I would, one last question. If someone did want to come by, whether it be
They
an
can call.
educator, a lawyer, or a-
480-5900. That's the central number, and all they got to do is ask for me or Nick,
Yeah.
and we'd be happy to. We'd love
and
to
it's a
schedule
very
tour.
secure environment, so I know
Very
folks have
much.
to qualify how they come, when they come, and what they're going to see.
We are more than happy to give
But that
tours
protects
of
the
charter
children.
school.
Yeah.
Because as you said, once you go in there and really see what we're up
It's
to.
not a walk-in environment for good reason.
Yeah.
Right,
But
exactly.
yeah,
but,
so call
but we
first.
give tours, absolutely.
Yeah, and all that, and that could be anyone from a banking officer to just a concerned citizen or a
Whoever
parent with
has
a child
interest.
in need. Right?
Correct.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
You guys are great. Thank you.